Hi, I hope you are having an amazing day. Today, I want to talk about the process and system that I use to actually apply what I learn from self-help books. I only started doing this at the end of last year, and it has really literally changed my life. I read so many self-help books, and that includes a lot of business books as well. Just a lot of books with advice on how to improve my life, and that kind of stuff feels so good to read and consume that it can be really tempting to just read it and then finish it, move on to the next one, and not actually apply it, because it does take effort to apply what you're learning, to actually do as they say. Almost every self-help book has a section either for reflection that has questions or with a list of things to do. And when we read that list of things to do, it can feel like we're doing them, if that makes sense. Like, we feel like we're taking action just by reading the book, and that can feel like it's enough, but it is not enough. And if you really want to make the most of self-help books, I recommend reading half as much as you currently do, assuming you are currently reading. If you don't have time for reading, I'm going to do a video on that as well. But to read less and apply more. So I'm going to be using, I'm just checking this recording, I'm going to be using this book as an example. I've talked about this book quite a bit, but I'm not really going to be talking about the book at all today. It's just a really good example of the system that I use and how I have actually started applying what I am learning. So this is just a system that I created, but it is based on a system that Ryan Holiday uses. Ryan is an entrepreneur. I find him incredibly inspiring. He talks a lot about Stoic philosophy and a lot about the stuff I like talking about, like motivation and discipline. And one of his books is called The Obstacle is the Way, and just that kind of idea, and the ego is the enemy, all that kind of personal development stuff. So I love him, and he has talked about his system that he uses to keep track of everything that he reads. He does a lot of reading. He is a very important person, I guess you could say, but he prioritizes reading and puts it in his calendar that he's going to read. And what I'm trying to say is, he reads a lot, and he has so many excuses that he could use not to. He could say he's too busy, he's got too many meetings, too many other priorities, but he prioritizes reading and applying what he reads. So I was really inspired by that to create my own system. And when I got this book from my little brother Alex for Christmas, I thought it would be the perfect time to start, particularly because this book is really heavy with advice, and I didn't want to just read it and then move on to the next book, because it really would be easy to feel inspired by this and mistake that for action, and that is definitely not what I wanted to do. So I put in the cover the date that I started reading, so Boxing Day last year, and I highlighted it in yellow just because I've highlighted quite a bit throughout the book, and I know I'm going to read it again, and I'll use a different color and I'll put the date there as well. Then I've got the tabs that I have used. So green is journaling exercises, blue is for quotes that I like or turns of phrase that I really enjoyed reading. Pink is for book recommendations, and orange is to do. And so I obviously didn't highlight every quote, every book recommendation, every to do item in here, only the ones that really resonated with me. So there's actually, this book is divided into healthy, wealthy, and wise, 3 sections, and I didn't even read very much at all of the healthy one. I think the only bit I read was mainly on mental resilience that was in the healthy section. But I love the wealthy and wise sections, as you might expect, and there was so much amazing advice. The one that helped in particular, and this is what I recommend the most if you don't want to create a really complicated system like this. This is also why I love reading physical books rather than Kindle or iPad. For some books, I have used the Kindle app on my iPhone, and I have a Plus. So it is actually, I mean, it's nearly the size of the book, but I love being able to like touch and feel it, and to highlight it, and to really interact with it, and to not be looking at a screen. So if I can get the hard copy, I will. The only time I was really using the Kindle app was when I was doing a lot of traveling. I didn't want to carry around a big heavy book, particularly my last trip. My bag was only 10 or 11 kilos, and that was for 8 weeks of travel. Pat myself on the back for that. That was really good. So I didn't want this to be a kilo. So, yeah, so the bit I recommend the most, got off on a bit of a tangent there, is having the journaling bit. So great to have quotes that you like and book recommendations and to do. The to-do stuff was when it was like, look this certain thing up or go out and do this certain thing today. But the journaling stuff, it was either an explicit journaling exercise. So there was one exercise in here on fear setting, which is what Tim Ferriss, an idea that he had. Tim Ferriss is the author of this book. An idea that he had about how to really get a hold of the fact that his fears weren't, the outcomes of his fears, like what he was scared of, wasn't as probable as he thought, and was much more reversible than he thought. So there was an exercise in that. I did that. That is really what helped me see that my fear of leaving my full-time job for blogging was really just a fear, and that I had nothing to lose, essentially. And there was, so that was an actual proper journaling exercise. But other things, I've just highlighted and put a green tab when someone said something really interesting. I'm like, I need to think through that. And what I was doing when I was reading this, I would spend 30 minutes reading and then 30 minutes doing a journaling exercise, or, doing something to apply what I was learning instead of reading for an hour. Or if I had half an hour, 15 minutes reading, 15 applying. So just doing a 50-50 split like that, and putting to use what I was actually reading and making it so much more valuable. So that was really amazing with the journaling stuff. There was a lot of stuff in there that I could have tabbed that I didn't. And just for the context, if you don't know this book, which I do highly recommend, it's the Tools of Titans, Tactics, Routines, and Habits of Billionaires, Icons, and World-Class Performers. And Tim Ferriss has a podcast called The Tim Ferriss Show, and this is really all the best bits of his interviews. He does long-form interviews, which I love. And he's also got some extra stuff just for the book. So it's only short snippets of little bits of advice from different people and their stories. So that's why it is so heavy with the advice all the time. But I've read a lot of other self-help books, and a lot of them are packed full of things. They might not have as many book recommendations or that kind of thing, but a lot of them would probably still have this much, especially if you're actively looking for it. And that's part of the reason I love this. It was because it really forced me to engage with the book. It can be really easy just to zone out when you're reading, and I'm sure I did at points, but having my highlighter out, having my tabs out, so nerdy, hey? But it really forces you to actually look for stuff you can apply, which is amazing in and of itself, because you find what you look for, and then actually making the time to apply it. I've talked about this a lot, I think, already, but one of the things that I applied, I think I highlighted it in with one of my to-do tabs, was just talking about creating an affirmation just being a goal that you write out 15 times a day. the podcast guest, he created the Dilbert comics. He just talked about all his experience with how it has a creepy way of working, and it just essentially isn't any kind of voodoo magic. You're just training your brain to focus on a particular outcome, and our brains are so powerful. They will see, if we train them to be looking for an opportunity, they will see it much more easily, which makes sense. So I was really fascinated with that, and I was like, why not try it? I have nothing to lose. It sounds so fascinating. And I wrote it about leaving my full-time job. It was that I will celebrate my last day at my full-time job on 30 June 2017 or sooner. My last day was the 10th of March 2017, and I handed in my resignation at the beginning of February. So it happened 4 months before I predicted it. Amazing. But I would normally have just read that, been like, that's interesting, and then moved on. But this time I actually applied it, and there's still so much from this book that I am going to go back through and apply, and I'm going to write out the quotes as well. Like this little piece of wisdom: you don't need to know where it's all going. How wise. There's just some things that are a bit more obscure. Some things that I've highlighted as quotes kind of, I guess, was something I needed to hear at the time. This one: most people will choose unhappiness over uncertainty. Preach. That is so true. Like, really just think about that. The world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. Preach. This is why I love this book so much. So that's basically the simple system that I use. I really seem to love waving this around. But I highly recommend making the effort to actually apply what you are reading. So read half as much and actually spend that other time that you'd spend reading applying. So this particularly works well, obviously, with self-help books, business books, anything like that. Fiction books, I haven't tried it with, but this is really any kind of educational book. There is so much to be gleaned from these books. People spend so much time creating a book, putting it all together. Some of the most successful people in the world spend years creating a book, and just making the time to apply it makes that information 20 million times more valuable. I think all forms of information were not created equal. Make the time to read books purely because of the effort involved and the thought and the structure. If you think you're too busy to read and you're spending a lot of time on social media, not necessarily this book, but there are a lot more helpful things, or make an effort to apply the things that you're learning on Instagram or on Facebook. Basically, my point is just to make time and put in the effort to apply what you are learning, because I was a passive consumer of personal development books for a very long time. I would maybe apply one or two things at most, but I didn't really have any system for it, and it would only be if something really, really, really stood out. But I know things in here that I have benefited from, I would normally have skipped over, and I just think it's so amazing that we have access to amazing books like this for only about $20, which is incredibly cheap for all the information that they have in them. If you can learn how to actually apply it and put it into practice. People will say things like, oh, that book didn't work for me. Books don't work, you do. So make sure you are putting in the work to get the results. Goes with anything, but yeah, a lot of people that I talk to read a lot of these books and then they're still stuck. And I get it, and sometimes it can take a bit to get out of that place, but make sure you're not just using them for inspiration and a way to feel productive. Make sure you are applying what you learn, doing what they suggest, being willing to be a beginner, to be a learner. to fumble around a bit because it is amazing. So that is my system. There it is again. Can you see? Journaling, quotes, books, and to do. You can create whatever system you like. I think it depends on the kind of book you're reading as to what you have. I love having colored tabs. If you're anything like me, you love highlighting and colors and everything like that. It's a lot more fun. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough if you can't already tell. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I share videos every single day. I will talk to you in the next one. Bye.